Welcome to Mr. Mutlow's Topic in 10 Minutes for O.C.R. A.2 Physical Education. This video is concerned with the case study activity of football. In order to understand the journey of football from a popular recreation through to a modern day phenomena, we must first understand its nature as a mob game. Unlike many of the other case study activities, football is the only mob game which was played by mass numbers of people in one particular fixture or event. Swimming, tennis, cricket and athletics were not played by hundreds of people at one time. Football, however, was. In order to understand what it was like as a popular recreation, therefore, we must understand many of the things which mob games did not have. Mob games, including football as a popular recreation, lacked a set pitch. Put simply, mob games did not have a set playing area. Football could be played between two goals a mile apart. Mob games also had no umpires or referees. As a popular recreation, mob football also lacked specific boundaries. This links closely to a lack of a set pitch, as not only may a pitch have no goals to speak of, but it may also have no sidelines or no maximum or minimum length. Equally, football as a popular recreation had a lack of skillfulness. The game at this time was largely about power and aggression and not about skill or ability. Put simply, the biggest and strongest succeeded. Mob football as a popular recreation also lacked regularity. There was no set or clear fixture list, nor was there a weekly game or a monthly competition. A lack of a governing body, and thus a lack of rules, were also key features of football as a popular recreation. That is not to say that football as a mob game had absolutely no rules at all, more that it was a violent and ugly spectacle, very unlike the one we are used to today. Finally, football as a mob game lacked any set positions on the field. Whereas today we are used to world-class teams like Northampton Town playing a set formation with certain players in certain positions, for example Ivan Toney up front, mob football as a popular recreation lacked any of this structure or organisation. For the examination, it's important that you understand that football was a disorganised, violent, unruly and unstructured pastime as a popular recreation, and that it did not mirror many of the things we know about football today. How then does this unruly and ugly pastime become the modern day phenomena which we understand in the 21st century? The answer to this question lies in its development in public schools and its development as a rational recreation in urban industrial towns. Whilst we know football as a popular recreation had low levels of organisation and regularity and poor levels of structure, it did find its way into public schools as an activity for occupying the boys' time. Many regional variations found their way into the initial melting pot, creating different individual variations at school, such as the Eton Wall game, Charterhouse football, or rugby football. These games were played as a pastime in the evenings and lacked any kind of formal organisation or structure, with each school having its own independent variation on mob football. By stage 2, however, Dr. Arnold had seen the importance of football as a means of social control, and therefore inter-house competitions were organised and developed. Teams would play Charterhouse football against each other at Charterhouse, or the Eton Wall game against each other at Eton. However, no inter-school competitions were yet occurring. Arnold encouraged the boys to play as it let off steam and allowed them to actively participate in something which acted as a means of social control. During Stage 2, many of the regional variations had rule adaptations added, reducing the levels of violence or ugliness which were prevalent as a popular recreation. By Stage 3, old boys at public schools had already established the Football Association. This was excellent as it allowed schools to compete against one another in inter-school fixtures. One codified set of rules, namely the Cambridge rules from Cambridge University, had been developed, and therefore Eton could now play rugby or Charterhouse at an inter-school game. Consequently, the game of football, which had started with a number of local variations becoming school variations with the first melting pot, had, by the end of the public school period, become a national game with regular inter-school fixture lists. Given the evident development of the FA at a relatively early stage, it is clear that football as a rational recreation will be highly organised and much like the game we know today, albeit without the same influences of technology and significant money. What then are the key things that we need to know about football as a rational recreation? Firstly, it is important to understand why football became a major spectator sport and took off in the way it did. This helps to explain the continued popularity of football across the world today. This development is due to a number of factors, including the simplicity of the game and the lack of equipment required relative to other sports. Equally, football requires a lack of space when you consider that 2 goals and a patch of grass approximately 100 metres long is all that we need. Football was also affordable and locally available, as every city or town had multiple football sides within it. Given that these games occurred in towns, there was a dense working class population who were prepared to watch the game, and it made the professionals, who were paid by factory owners and other people who established teams, heroes among the working class. Equally, the development of transport after the Industrial Revolution allowed widespread travel and competition, and this allowed spectating as well as playing to flourish. Hence, football became an incredibly popular activity amongst the working classes due to a lack of equipment, a perceived simplicity in the rules, and the regularity and availability of teams to support or play in around their urban industrial lifestyles. The story of football was not necessarily a totally positive one, however, and there were those who did not like the new game which the Football Association formed. Indeed, there were those who preferred a handling game, and these people broke away to form the Rugby Football Union. This organisation established a handling code of the game of football, one which allowed people to specialise in this area if that was their preference. Whilst factory owners were prepared to allow people to work as professionals and use broken time payments to this end, rugby was considered a game of gentlemen, not the lower classes, and therefore any kind of professionalism was outlawed. These broken time payments in football allowed people to be paid for a different working week, one which allowed people to make money playing football whilst also making money working in factories. In rugby, however, professionalism was not encouraged at all, and the game became an amateur game played largely by the gentry only. That said, during the 19th century, there were those who wanted to play rugby professionally. However, this took much longer to come to fruition. After the Industrial Revolution, and early in the 20th century, Northern League clubs in rugby decided they wished to play a professional game, and therefore split away from the Rugby Football Union, creating the Rugby Football League. It is here that the split between Union and League, which still exists today, was first formatted. Those who wished to play professionally went and played in the Northern Leagues, and those who did not wish to, and wished to continue the amateur gentlemen's traditions of Union, continued to play in the South. It was only in 1995 that the Rugby Football Union first introduced professionalism. For the examination, it is important that you know why football becomes such a popular activity for both players and spectators, and how the Rugby Football Union and Rugby Football League were developed and expanded. It is also important that you know the impact of football today and many of the things which may influence participation or the levels at which the game is played. As always, this is an area where you can conduct further research. That concludes the topic in 10 minutes on the case study activity of football.